He was tied to the torture tree, his body bruised and bleeding from the battle. The warriors of the Delaware tribe, his captors, danced around him, their voices rising in a sharp, rhythmic chant that promised a slow death. He was Tamak, a chief of the Pequot, and he was ready to die. But as he looked into the frenzied crowd, he saw her, Elara, the woman he loved, the woman who had been stolen from his people years ago, now standing among his enemies, her breast marked with the sacred turtle totem of the very tribe that was about to burn him alive. He had found her, only to realize she was one of them. Before the Dutch and the English carved their empires from the wilderness, the land along the great Chattahoochee, the river that flows both ways, now known as the Hudson, was a tapestry of shifting alliances and brutal ancient rivalries. The Mohicans, the Huron, the Delaware, and the Pequot were in a constant, bloody struggle for dominance, for hunting grounds, and for honor. This was a land where survival was measured in seasons, and loyalty was measured in blood. In this world lived Tamak, a young rising chief of the Pequot. He was known for his speed and his silence in the forest, but his heart was not in the hunt, nor was it in the war. It belonged to Elara, a woman of his tribe known for her fierce spirit and a beauty that seemed to mirror the wild, untamed nature of the land itself. They had been betrothed since childhood. Theirs was a union that was meant to strengthen the Pequot people, a promise of a future. That future was stolen in a single brutal raid. It happened during the moon of falling leaves. The Delaware, the grandfather tribe, swept down from the north. The attack was swift and merciless. Elara, along with several other young women, was taken captive. Tamak fought with the fury of a cornered panther, but he was outnumbered. He was left for dead beside the ashes of his own lodge, clutching a single strand of beads that had been torn from Elara's neck in the struggle. Tamak did not die. He recovered, but the man who rose from the ashes was not the same. The warmth in his eyes was replaced by a cold, hard obsidian. He lived for one purpose: vengeance. And if the Great Spirit willed it, rescue. For years, Elara's fate was a mystery. In the brutal economy of intertribal warfare, captives were often killed, traded, or worst of all, adopted and assimilated, their past lives erased, their identities forcibly remade. This was the fate of Elara. The Delaware warriors, impressed by her defiance and unbroken spirit, chose not to kill her. She was taken to their main settlement, a strategic patch of land on the Hudson known as Apo-keep-sink, the safe harbor. It was a hidden cove protected by a high cliff the settlers would one day call Call Rock, and a swampy marsh known as Adder Cliff for the thousands of rattlesnakes that nested there. She was given to a childless warrior. Her Pequot identity was stripped from her. She was forced to learn their language, their customs, and, in a painful, binding ritual, the mark of the turtle, the sacred totem of the Delaware, was tattooed onto her breast. She was now, in the eyes of the tribe, a Delaware. To the Pequot, she was dead.
Elara learned to survive. She hardened her heart, burying the memory of Tamak under layers of forced obedience. She became a shadow in the camp, her face a mask of compliance, her soul a raging, silent inferno. She knew that to show her true feelings, to show any sign of her old self, would mean a quick and terrible death.
Years passed. Tamak, now a renowned war chief, never stopped searching. His quest for vengeance against the Delaware had become legendary among the Pequot. He led raid after raid, pushing his warriors deeper into enemy territory, always hunting, always searching for any sign, any whisper of Elara. His search led him, inevitably, to the banks of the Hudson, to the formidable natural fortress of Apo-keep-sink. He came with a small band of his best warriors, moving like shadows under the cover of a moonless night. He did not come for war, but for reconnaissance. He needed to know if she was there. He found the safe harbor, the dense village teeming with Delaware warriors. He watched from the ridge, his heart pounding, scanning the faces around the cook fires. He did not find her, but he was seen. A Delaware hunting party, returning late, spotted the intruders. The alarm cry, a sharp, piercing hawk shriek, shattered the night. The safe harbor erupted like a disturbed nest of hornets. Tamak and his men were surrounded, cut off from their canoes, their escape route blocked by the river on one side and the snake-infested Adder Cliff on the other. The battle was short, desperate, and hopeless. Tamak's warriors fell one by one, buying their chief time with their lives. Tamak himself fought until his war club shattered and his knife was broken. He was finally brought down by a dozen warriors, subdued not by skill, but by sheer, overwhelming numbers. He was dragged, bound and bleeding, to the center of the village. The Delaware warriors, their faces painted for victory, began to celebrate. They had captured the most hated of their enemies, the Pequot wolf, who had plagued their borders for years. His death would be a glorious spectacle, a sacrifice to appease their own war god. They bound him to a tall, stripped tree that served as the village's torture post. They began to build the fire at his feet. The women of the tribe came out, their voices sharp and cruel, taunting him, spitting on him. They brought brands from the cook fires, preparing for the slow, agonizing ritual of death by fire and blade. Tamak closed his eyes. He had failed. He had not found Elara. He began to sing his death song, his voice low and defiant, a final act of rebellion against the fate that had brought him so low. The chanting of the warriors grew louder. The shaman began the ritual. Tamak opened his eyes for one last look at the world. He scanned the faces in the crowd, faces contorted in hatred, faces eager for the spectacle of his suffering. And then he saw her. She was standing at the back of the crowd, partially hidden by the shadow of a lodge. She was older, her features harder, but it was her. It was Elara.
His heart leaped, a sudden agonizing surge of hope and despair. He was about to cry out her name. But she stepped forward into the firelight. The movement caused her buckskin dress to shift, revealing the skin of her chest. And there, stark and dark against her skin, was the unmistakable, deep blue tattoo of the sacred turtle. Tamak's world shattered. She was not a captive. She was one of them. She was Delaware. The woman he loved, the woman he had spent years trying to avenge, was now his enemy, a willing participant in his own execution. The betrayal was a pain sharper than any blade. He dropped his head, his death song dying in his throat. The Delaware chief raised his hand, signaling for the first torch to be brought forward. "Stop!" The voice was female, clear and commanding. The warriors paused, confused. Elara pushed her way through the ring of executioners. She walked directly to Tamak, ignoring the bound prisoner, and faced the chief. "This man must not die," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. The chief stared at her. "He is Pequot. He is our enemy. He is a wolf. He will die." "He is my people," Elara said, her voice dropping, but her eyes locked on the chief's. The crowd gasped. It was treason. "You are Delaware," the chief snarled, pointing to the totem on her chest. "The turtle is your mother." "You put this mark on my skin," Elara shot back, her hand moving to cover the tattoo. "You did not put it in my heart. This man was my betrothed before your warriors stole me. My life was pledged to his. By the ancient laws, by the honor of the spirits, you cannot take what is already mine." The warriors murmured. This was a complex matter. To kill a man already claimed by a member of their own tribe, even an adopted one, was a spiritual crime. It could bring a curse. The chief was momentarily paralyzed, caught between the bloodlust of his warriors and the fear of an old superstition. Elara had chosen her moment perfectly. She had seen the indecision, the sudden doubt in the chief's eyes. She pressed her advantage. "I beg for his life," she said, her voice now softer, pleading. "Let him be a slave. Let him be banished. But do not kill the man whose life belongs to me." The chief hesitated. The warriors began to shout, demanding blood. The shaman raised his hands, chanting for the execution to proceed. The debate raged. Tamak watched, stunned into silence, as the woman he thought was lost to him now stood as his only shield, her body a fragile barrier between him and the burning torches. It was in that precise, agonizing moment of indecision that a new sound cut through the night. It was a sound that every tribe in the valley dreaded more than any other. A high-pitched, ululating war yell. It did not come from the river. It came from the woods, from the cliffs above the camp. The Huron.
The Huron were upon them before the Delaware could even form a defensive line. They poured down the cliffs, a wave of screaming, painted warriors, their tomahawks already swinging. The Huron, sated on their own victories further north, had seen the smoke from the Delaware camp and had come to slaughter. The safe harbor instantly became a vortex of chaos. The Delaware warriors, forgetting their prisoner and their ritual, turned to fight the new, more immediate threat. The air was filled with screams, the clash of stone against steel, and the wet, percussive thud of axes meeting flesh. In the confusion, Tamak and Elara were forgotten. Elara, her mind moving with desperate clarity, did not run. She ducked behind the torture tree, pulling a forgotten skinning knife from the belt of a fallen Delaware warrior. She lunged at Tamak, not to kill him, but to cut his bonds. The rawhide ropes snapped. Tamak was free, but unarmed. He ripped a war club from the hands of a Huron who had just struck down a Delaware. He and Elara stood back to back, two Pequot warriors united, fighting for their lives against both the Huron and the Delaware, who now saw them as equal enemies. The battle was a swirling, bloody mess. A Huron warrior, seeing Elara, grabbed her by the hair, dragging her toward the forest. Tamak roared and leaped after him, but two Delaware braves intercepted him. He was forced to fight, to kill the very men who had been his captors moments before. He struck one down, then the other. But when he looked up, Elara and the Huron war party were gone. The Hurons, sated with the blood of the Delaware, had taken their new captive and retreated back into the dark forest. Tamak screamed her name. He was free, but he had lost her again. He was alone, deep in enemy territory, his love now a prisoner of a third tribe. He fled into the darkness, the sounds of the dying Delaware camp echoing behind him, his heart a cold, hard stone of despair. For weeks, Tamak lived like an animal, a ghost in the woods. He hunted, but he did not eat. He moved, but he had no destination. His mind was consumed by a single, impossible thought: finding the Huron. He was one man against an entire tribe, in a land he did not know. His grief slowly hardened into a new resolve. He could not rescue her with force. He would have to use cunning. He began to change himself. He was a chief, but he was also a man of the forest. He knew the old ways, the secret languages of the spirits. He gathered strange roots, pale fungi, and the skins of snakes. He matted his long black hair with mud and pine resin. He painted his face not with the colors of war, but with the chilling, skeletal white and black of a shaman, a wizard. He made himself into something the forest would respect, something other men would fear. He began to walk north, toward the Huron lands. He traveled not as a warrior, but as a medicine man. He allowed himself to be seen, a gaunt, terrifying figure emerging from the mist. He let the rumors travel ahead of him that a powerful, half-mad wizard was wandering the woods, a man who spoke to the spirits and held the power of life and death. He finally reached the outskirts of the main Huron settlement. He waited, he listened, and he heard what he had been praying for. The Huron were in the grip of a strange sickness.
It had begun after their raid on the Delaware. Their warriors, once strong, were now weak, plagued by shaking fits and night terrors. They believed the spirits of the Delaware they had slaughtered had followed them home, cursing their camp. Tamak knew this sickness. It was not a curse. It was the battle nerves that sometimes follow a bloody massacre. It was a sickness of the soul. He allowed himself to be found. He was dragged before the Huron chief, a gaunt, wild-eyed figure in his wizard's disguise. The Hurons, desperate for a cure, asked him to use his enchantments. They told him the sickness had struck many, but none so badly as a new captive they had taken, a woman who now lay in a tent, refusing to speak, lost in a world of her own terror. Tamak's heart hammered against his ribs, but his face remained a mask of indifference. He was brought to the woman's tent. He was left alone with his patient. He entered the tent. It was Elara. She was lying on a pile of furs, her eyes open but vacant, her body trembling. She was suffering from the profound shock of the battle. Tamak knelt beside her. He looked at her, his disguise still in place. "Elara," he whispered, his voice low. She did not react. "Elara," he said again, this time in the old soft dialect of the Pequot, the language of their childhood. Her eyes slowly focused. She looked at the terrifying painted face of the wizard. She saw his eyes. "Tamak?" she breathed.
He revealed his identity, his voice quick and urgent. He told her the Hurons believed him to be a powerful medicine man. He explained his plan. She was not to be cured tonight. She was to pretend to sleep. He would leave, telling the chief he must prepare his sacred items for a ritual at dawn. And at midnight, when the camp was dark and the guards were lax, he would return. He left the tent and told the Huron chief that the spirit plaguing the woman was strong. He needed the darkness of the deepest night to fight it. He would return at the 3rd hour. At midnight, he moved. He was a shadow among shadows. He reached her tent, cut a slit in the back wall with his knife, and pulled her out into the darkness. They ran. They ran as they had never run before. This time there was no hesitation. They heard the alarm cry behind them, the shouts of the enraged Hurons, but they did not look back. They ran south, back toward the great river. They ran for their lives, for their future. They were pursued for a full day, the Huron warriors on their heels. But Tamak was in his element. He hid their trail. He moved through the water. He used every trick of the forest he knew. Finally, exhausted, bleeding, and starving, they reached the banks of the Hudson. They looked across the water. It was the safe harbor. It was Apo-keep-sink. The place of their greatest terror was now truly their only sanctuary. They found a hidden canoe, a remnant from the battle, and pushed off into the water. They did not look back. They journeyed east, away from the Hudson, away from the Delaware and the Huron, back toward the healing lands of their own country. And there, at last, they were married. The name Apo-keep-sink meant a safe, pleasant harbor. For the Delaware, it was a fortress. For Tamak, it was a torture chamber. For the Huron, it was a killing ground. And for Tamak and Elara, it was, in the end, their only escape. The place itself seems to be a paradox, a vortex of both extreme violence and profound sanctuary. Was it the chaos of the Huron attack that truly saved Tamak from the fire? Or did the spirits of that ancient place, the guardians of the safe harbor, recognize a love that transcended tribal war? Did they intervene, unleashing a greater violence to protect the two lovers who, against all odds, had found each other again in the heart of the massacre? The land holds its secrets, but the river remembers. Leave your theories on the true nature of the safe harbor in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Shadow Tales Illustrated for more deep dives into the chilling folklore of our land.